think it's an exciting program because it has a unique profile. Of all the programs out there in the disciplines of European studies and European cultures, this is the one program I'm aware of that actually focuses specifically on issues of identity, which is of crucial importance and relevance in the world today. So it is not just a unique degree in an Irish context, but it's also an innovative degree in an international context as well. From my own perspective, I believe that leaders and political leaders play a crucial role in the world today, and they are increasingly represented in irrational and cultic terms. But those representations actually offer a simplified, condensed version of the identity that these leaders want to promote and the identities these leaders want to create in a society. So through the representations of modern political leaders with authoritarian ambitions, we can understand how identity construction processes and mechanisms work or worked throughout history.
I'm from Dublin originally, but actually previous to the course I was living in Berlin, and I was looking at courses there as well and courses in Ireland. And actually, having just looked around at all the courses, this one stood out to me because of the trip and the placement, and I really like those practical elements of the course. And those parts of the course have actually really stood to me and have really shaped what I want to do in the future. So yeah, those are the two biggest parts to me, I suppose, why I was really keen on doing this course.
I really liked the interdisciplinary approach and that the way that the degree, it looks at the question of identity from like a multitude of perspectives. I thought that was a really, like, quite a unique approach, and something that really did appeal to me in terms of a master's. And then also I was very happy to see that there was the opportunity to do a placement, because I think that for me it was important to get kind of an applied, or the opportunity to apply my knowledge, you know, in a workspace or.
So my undergrad was in English literature, and I loved it, but I wanted to do something that was a little bit more broad, that focused maybe on politics, history, other interests of mine. And the Identities course allowed us to explore a whole range of different subjects with professors of different interests. I've loved my peace studies, I've loved the European history and culture and food, and so it kind of brought together a whole lot of my interests and intellectual kind of curiosities in a course, which I think is quite unusual because you're generally having one stream like literature or politics or history, and this kind of combined quite a few different areas, which allowed me to think about my future career in a more diverse way and kind of didn't limit me as much as it gave me different ideas of potential avenues to work in.
This degree has kind of opened up many different possibilities for career paths for me personally, I feel like, because I'm interested in so many things at the same time, and so many areas of study at the same time, and through exploring those as part of this course and all of the modules, I'm definitely more interested in doing a PhD now, and I also feel like the kind of skill set that we acquire as part of this course, critical thinking and independent thinking, is very, very important, and it's also definitely going to be helpful for my future career.
So the NGO I'm working at is Belong to Youth Services. So it's an NGO that supports young LGBTI+ people in Ireland. So they do that through youth work, changing attitudes, and then policy and advocacy. So I'm working belong to as an intern in policy and advocacy. So a lot of my work would be on lobbying policies that would improve the lives of young LGBTI+ people. 2 projects I've worked on have been the general election, so lobbying political parties to, adopt new policies such as inclusive education for, young people who have LGBTI+ identities, and the review of a Gender Recognition Act, so young trans non-binary people can have recognition of their identities. Another thing that actually has been really interesting as well that I've been working on is hate crime legislation in Ireland, or lack of. So basically people with, LGBTI+ identities, facing hate incidents because of who they are. And that's been actually a really kind of interesting area to work in because it's really relevant, really current.
It's a spectacular campus. It's quite special from that point of view. It's very contained whilst also being sizable at the heart of a really amazing city. What's very different about Trinity is that it has an Oxford and Cambridge style campus, but it's a standalone. It's not one of 20 or 33 other colleges in a small city. It's a standalone at the heart of this amazing capital, European capital, and it's unique in that respect. It also happens to be the home to one of the best humanities institutes, arts and humanities institutes that I know of. At any decent university in Europe. Really amazing, the Trinity Long Room Hub. And I also think what's quite striking about Trinity is a sort of culture of fierce and highly opinionated intellectual debate and discussion that goes on in the corridors and in lecture theatres and everywhere you care to actually open your ears to. So I think it's quite striking. So I think if you come here, you're going to be very engaged, in fact.
So I'm hoping to look at the identity of Erasmus babies, and Erasmus babies are the children whose parents met when they were doing an Erasmus program. So a lot of research has been done into the identity of Erasmus students, trying to see do they feel more European, and also a lot of research has been done into the identity of third culture kids, and Erasmus babies would tend to be third culture kids, but to date, nothing that I have seen has focused on the identity of the Erasmus babies themselves because it's a fairly recent phenomenon. But what's interesting is the EU Commission claimed that there are 1 million of these Erasmus babies in Europe since the programme was launched in '87, and I've managed to find 4 Erasmus babies so far, so I am kind of challenging the EU.
One thing I like, firstly, is just how broad the choices are. You can choose from loads of different areas. I think that's really important. And even looking at our class group, everyone has different interests, so that's really ideal, I guess. But for me, one of the courses that I was really interested in taking was the gender theories course. And actually kind of bringing my knowledge from that course to my placement even, because my placement is at an NGO that supports young LGBTI+ people. So I could actually bring my knowledge from that module to this placement, which has actually been amazing, and I know everyone in the NGO has actually really appreciated that as well.
I would recommend this program to anyone that's interested in several areas of study, people who enjoy working independently, and what's been really great for me personally is to have the kind of a background support structure for my own curiosity, in the sense that before I came here, I knew that I wanted to look at new things and look at different things, but I didn't know what those things were. And the program has definitely supported me in finding those areas and then going deeper into those fields of study.
So I'm doing my internship at Amnesty International Ireland, and it's very close to Trinity, so that's also very helpful. And I've been dealing with youth activism, and so within that we at Amnesty International do a lot of work with the local schools, and what I'm currently doing is building resources to help educate school children about human rights. Yeah, so that's been really interesting. It's been challenging because I've had to balance my academic work, but then also working hours, and I want to, of course, work as much as I can there because it's something that's very interesting to me.
I really liked the trip because I thought, well, the first thing was I thought it was great that it was in October at the start of the year because we didn't really know each other as a class group, and then it kind of cemented friendships, or we really got to know each other, which was great. And then in terms of, well, I found it very interesting also when we met the Trinity alumni over there and kind of got to see what they were doing in Brussels and how they got there. I found that really helpful because I learned about traineeships, which is something I had never heard of before, and something that maybe I'd be interested in doing in the future. And I just thought it was great in general because it really brought the EU to life for me. I didn't really know. Brussels was just, this buzzword, and this trip, it kind of, gave you the opportunity to see what the Commission felt like, the atmosphere, everything, so it did bring it to life.
For me, the main kind of thing I took from the trip to Leuven was meeting the people who work in the NGOs, such as human rights, and kind of understanding what they do. And that really shaped my choice of placement as well, and what I wanted from the placement. Going into it, I wanted to do something regarding Palestine advocacy, just because of what I learned from the trip to Leuven and to Brussels, which is actually going to shape my future career as well, to be honest, in the end. So yeah, it seems linear, but it actually happened quite organically. Actually, it was really nice to get to know the people in the course, to spend a few days together, kind of, with more contact hours, just getting to know them, hearing what they're interested in. I think especially for me, just hearing what they want to do after the course, and how we all have kind of different areas of interest. Even when meeting the people in the NGOs, you could see who really kind of took to a certain NGO or cultural institute, and what other people were interested in. That for me was really exciting, actually. And I think Brussels is a beautiful city, so it's nice to be there.
I think all of us were confronted with social and cultural issues that we'd never looked at before, and also because we went to so many different institutions and organizations, and especially in terms of the career that I want to be looking at later, it was really interesting to see that the approach that we're learning in this master's degree is actually applicable in the real world.
I think what stands out is that we can choose from a range of very interesting courses that was hard to actually decide which course in terms of which lecture we wanted to go on which day, because they all sounded amazing. But within that, once we've chosen a course, we have a small group, so we're able to interact with our professors, ask questions, and kind of within our essays and dissertation delve into issues that we're interested in.
I would recommend the course to anyone who's interested in really exploring the topic of identity from many different perspectives. And I think that to do well, in my experience, what's important is that curiosity, because there's so many opportunities to be creative in the degree, and I think that you do need to have probably a natural curiosity about the question of identity, and kind of exploring that further and seeing just how topical it is.
for me it happened very organically. I don't think it was very I went into the course knowing what I wanted to do exactly. It was more, I knew kind of what interested me about it, and I was happy to take it from there. I think for me it was, I studied the gender theories module. We went on the trip to Leuven, we met the NGOs, understood kind of what they did, and I knew based on that trip that I wanted to go into an NGO for the placement where I could work in advocacy or policy in some way. And I got that. I managed to get a placement with Belong To, which I was delighted about. And having been there since January, I want to work in that area. So yeah, whether that's in Ireland or abroad, actually in Brussels or elsewhere in Europe, we'll see, but I know that's the area I want to be in. I'm also considering one of the EU traineeships, which is kind of still in a similar area in human rights.
My background originally was in design, so that's something completely different and not very academic. And one of the fields that I'm now mainly interested in is literature and linguistics. That's something that I'd never looked at before, and that just came about because of this course.
Before I started this master's, I had kind of thought about going into academia as a career, and I suppose seeing how much work is involved, how much, working on your own and being in the library and that kind of thing. That's been really good for me because I have learned how I cope with that, which is something that's useful. And also the trip to Leuven helped, as I was saying before, because I learned about traineeships in the EU, and that's definitely something that I'd like to think about doing in the future. So yeah, in that way it has helped me to see that there are ways that I could work in this area outside of academia.
Professors are very receptive and, willing to meet and support. Yeah, which is obviously brilliant. It's, someone being approachable makes a huge difference.
My contributions will take two forms. The first contribution will be looking at the impact of climate change, of the ecological crisis, on how we think about the very disciplines that we're engaged in. In other words, that when we have to think about the role of humans in a world in the age of the Anthropocene, so the age of human-induced climate change, we have to think about the relationship between humans and other species. So we've got to ask ourselves, what do the humanities look like in this very, very changed world? Do we have to think about the post-humanities? If the role of humans, how we perceive humans, how they perceive themselves is being altered by the fact of climate change, then we need the conceptual and the theoretical and the analytic tools to be able to understand this increasingly post-human condition. So that's the first contribution. The second contribution is to look at something that is very much an integral part of people's lives, namely food and drink. If we think of the pizza, if we think of champagne, we think of things that travel, food items that travel. So what are the consequences then for the fact that basically when we sit down to eat, increasingly we find the world on our plate. So that mixture, if you like, between the specific identities that give rise to specific food cultures and then the mobility of food cultures, and what are the impacts or the consequences then for how we define or think of ourselves in terms of the more composite cultural identities that people have. So because food and drink is something we actually ingest, we actually take into ourselves, it becomes part of our substance, it is a very real contact with cultural difference. And if we take into bear in mind the ecological dimension when we think about what kinds of farming practices are we going to have going into the future, what kinds of practices of consumption with respect to food, the preparation, the production, the consumption of food, how is this going to affect different food cultures across Europe.
The degree was great for that, for kind of carving your own path out of it. So there's a lot of freedom I found in essays. Like you could kind of really just, the classes were great because they showed you loads of different ways of looking at identity from so many different perspectives, and then I could just kind of, really focus on one particular area that kind of caught my interest. And so, yeah, in that way I definitely have managed to make it, to kind of cater it towards my interests, which has been lovely.
The thing that stands out to me the most about this program is the very well thought out structure, because it allows the students both to bring in their individual focus with the optional modules, but at the same time I've also been confronted with so many new areas of study that I never would have considered looking at myself. I think one of the great things about this degree is that it allows students to work very independently. So you can put work into the things that you actually care about.
The kind of first area of general interest and how enjoyable the course is, I've really enjoyed it. So from that perspective, I would recommend it. And then the other aspect of it is you want the course to be practical too. You want to actually, gain something from it. And this course has really served me in that area. And yeah, that's something that will probably shape my career for years to come.